So, I've been making weekly reviews and discussions of each Bad Batch episode as they come out, and as you might have noticed if you've been watching them, my take on the show hasn't been entirely positive. Sure, there are lots of great moments, cool battles, and an interesting story. And sure, the animation and art design are absolutely incredible. But it just doesn't seem to connect with me as much as it should. So now I think it's a great time to dive in and figure out why that is. Spoilers ahead for episodes 1 through 9 of The Bad Batch. Now, I've already made another video talking about the problems with animated Star Wars shows more generally, but there's something else about The Bad Batch in particular that's worth discussing as well. In my reviews, I try really hard to point out the things that I like, but I usually end up mostly nitpicking on small details that seemed off to me. And I know why that is. The show doesn't have that much else story-wise to talk about. One thing affecting this, like I talked about in my more general video on Star Wars animation, is that The Bad Batch has really slow pacing. Not much happens in each episode. Sure, each episode moves the story forward and develops the characters, but the steps are so small they're barely even noticeable sometimes. While there may not be any filler episodes per se, it's more like each episode is made of 80% filler itself. There's a definite trend that the beginning of the episode pushes the story forward with an interesting premise, the middle of the episode is mostly filler action scenes or redundant character moments that don't add much, and then at the end we get another final push that moves the story forward an inch. Yes, it's a side effect of the TV show format, and yes, it affects other shows like The Clone Wars and The Mandalorian too, but not to the same level as The Bad Batch. I think that the main reason for this is the attempted serialization this time. In The Clone Wars and other shows headed by Filoni, there are distinct arcs that last 3 or 4 episodes, with each arc building towards a larger story. Or in the case of The Mandalorian, it's pretty much episodic. Even if there's filler in the arc or episode, which there of course always was, then it would still progress with each episode to reach a conclusion that adds to the overall story. And if a particular arc was dragging or had too much filler, it would be quickly replaced by the next arc to keep the story fresh and always moving. But The Bad Batch doesn't have this. The first season so far has basically been like a typical Clone Wars arc artificially stretched over 9+ episodes. If this were like the Clone Wars, we would have seen them escaping Kamino and building their new life on the run as a fast, efficient, self-contained adventure over maybe 3 episodes. Which it kind of was, which is why I liked The Bad Batch's opening enough to start my own review series on it. But after that, we have at least 6 episodes of meandering bounty hunter chases with one random episode cameo from Captain Rex. In the Clone Wars style, this would have been more like a tight 2-episode arc of them joining Rex and then having some experience that makes them go their separate ways, followed by a 4-episode arc of escalating bounty hunter action culminating with Cad Bane. But as it is, it just kind of feels lost and directionless, which totally kills any pacing or feeling of momentum. At the end of episode 4, Omega is with the Bad Batch trying to hide from random bounty hunters. Then, 5 episodes later, at the end of episode 9, Omega is still just hanging out with the Bad Batch trying to hide from random bounty hunters. It's just not going anywhere. And it doesn't help that the characters are directionless themselves. In the Clone Wars, we knew everything was leading into Revenge of the Sith. In Rebels, we knew everything was leading into A New Hope. In The Mandalorian, we have a clear goal of discovering the secret of Grogu, Baby Yoda, and finding him a safe new home. And it's clear that the Bad Batch is trying to copy that Mandalorian model. Except, not really. The Mandalorian had a rough, roguelike character actively trying to find a new safe home for the child. Sure, there were bounty hunters, fight scenes, and side quest missions, but everything always tied back into the search for a new home for Grogu. But the Bad Batch doesn't have this because they aren't looking for a new safe home to leave Omega at. They had that opportunity when they met Rex and they just let it go. Omega's home is with the Bad Batch in their spaceship. Her safe place is with the Bad Batch in their spaceship. So our characters aren't active, they don't do anything, they're passive. They don't have a goal. Run away from bad guys when they show up is not a goal. Drift randomly from planet to planet just hanging out with Omega and doing random stuff is not a goal. The Bad Batch is aimless, and that's why more than halfway through the first season, it honestly feels boring to me at this point. Now, I'm sure this is a very controversial opinion. Lots of people love the show, and you might even be one of them. Good on you if you are. It's always great when people find new things that they really like. I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with me on this, or just think I'm too judgmental of the show, and that's fair. If you disagree, just leave a comment nicely telling me why. I'd love to hear about it. But for me, the show just doesn't work. And this could be because I focus too much on the details, my standards for storytelling are too high, or I'm just too cynical. It could totally be that, and I wouldn't be surprised if my views on this change later. They did on the Clone Wars. But for now, as it is, I'm gonna keep watching and making my weekly reviews for Season 1, but I think it's also worth making this video so you know where I'm coming from. Hopefully it helped you get a new perspective on the Bad Batch or helped you figure out the cause if you'd also been feeling that the show was off. But anyway, here's to character, storytelling, and a hope that the Bad Batch finds its footing by the end of the first season. Whether you agree or disagree with my take, leave a comment letting me know your thoughts, share the video with friends, and I'll see you for the next episode of The Bad Batch.